On a warm summer's day in 2015, my German grandmother sat me down and said, "The air in Europe is starting to smell like the 1930s again. This is not a time to stand by and watch history repeat itself. Where are you going to position yourself, Lily?" At that time, I was working as a filmmaker, documenting the jet-set life of the rich and famous from inside a luxury 5-star hotel in central London. Something my grandmother wasn't very impressed with, to say the least. Her stern words prompted me to take a day off work and hire a van. Together with my 13-year-old daughter and friends, we filled it up with oranges, tents, and trainers we had collected in our local community and drove south towards the English Channel. After a couple of hours, we arrived in the Calais jungle, a toxic wasteland slum surrounded by barbed wire. Thousands of eyes stared at us as we drove in through a sea of makeshift shelters. Every face we passed showed traces of loss, war, and trauma, broken lifelines. But within that, the invincible resilience of the human spirit and its power and determination to build community in the most dire of circumstances. There were hundreds of children, filthy floods of waste, long queues for hot meals, fires that burned everything they could find to keep warm, traffickers, smugglers, and armies of French riot police patrolling the ground. This place in the heart of Europe, in 21st century France, 100 miles south from London, didn't qualify to be called a refugee camp, according to UNHCR standards. It was like a scene straight from a disaster movie. The people living here called it the jungle because it was a place fit for animals, not humans. My grandmother's voice of warning of a generation of Germans that enabled and experienced extreme othering during the Nazi times echoed in me as I got out of our van and started unloading the donations we had brought. I have to confess, at this point, something I'm not proud of. I was absolutely terrified. From all sides, men of color surrounded us, reaching for our crates of oranges. A deep fear of the other, something I didn't even know existed, and some hidden part of my mind took complete hold of me. What was I thinking bringing my daughter here? I dropped the oranges, grabbed her, and fled for sanctuary in a makeshift nearby church where I fell to the ground. My head was racing. I was trying to make sense of that scene outside and how to get my daughter out of here alive. Suddenly, this voice from somewhere inside me said, "Get up, go out there now, listen, and when you have listened enough, do the little bit you can." I followed that voice, went outside, and listened. A 15-year-old boy told me his story of traveling alone for 3 years since fleeing his home country in Ethiopia. The night before, he had lost his only possession, a photograph of his dead mother, whilst he was stripped naked and beaten by police. Why? He had tried to jump on the back of a lorry headed for the UK, hoping to find his uncle. Every night he risked his life for a good chance. Like everyone stuck here, it was his last hope for a new life. Many died trying, others lost the use of their legs and limbs. Unable to access a safe route to the UK, even though it was their legal right under international law to claim asylum there. Maybe it's the complex paradox of our shared human experience, but every tent we were invited into that day felt like being invited into a palace. The kindness, openness, and generous hospitality that emerges in the darkest hour, offered by those who have lost everything, turn cans of baked beans into feasts. We drank sweet tea and shared our stories that had brought us here. And it soon dawned on me that we all had far more in common than separated us. If only the tables were turned, these could be my sons, my daughters, my own story, or yours. Being with people here was so different from the stories we hear that are nameless, faceless, warning us of swarms of migrants, dangerous refugees, hordes of illegal immigrants threatening our borders and resources. Stories that strip people of their courage, their dignity, their dreams, and their humanity. Media headlines turning humans into labels, into numbers. This is how othering works and how it takes hold of us. We show other people and cultures again and again as scapegoats in our personal or political agendas, and that's what they become. We create caricatures and stereotypes that separate us from them, justifying our treatment of each other. Chimananda Ngozi Adichie calls it the single story, and we are all susceptible and vulnerable to it. The way we tell stories, who gets to tell them, how we disempower people by what we choose to tell about them is what comes to define them. And in turn, these narratives define me, you, and all of us who buy into them. Why do we find it easier to open our doors to Ukrainian refugees rather than those from a foreign culture, a different skin color, or religion? The alarming rise of nationalism and its sophisticated propaganda machine depend on stories of blaming and fearing the other. These stories have the power to channel our collective outrage about our own broken systems, and they make us protect ourselves by building and investing in walls, whilst distracting from the real elephant in the room. How are we going to fix our systems that benefit only a chosen few? So what if we remembered some of the stories that we're trying to forget? How colonial pursuits have left chaos and conflicts until this day across Africa, the Middle and Far East. How our military-industrial complex makes money out of bombs. How traffickers deliver the modern slaves many of our consumer and leisure industries depend on. And how the so-called pull factor to Europe is a post-colonial legacy we ourselves have left behind. We are all in this together. Our complex history of our shared humanity has literally landed on our doorstep. And it is just through the good fortune in our global lottery of birth that it is us sitting here in this room today. Albert Einstein said we cannot solve our problems on the same levels of thinking that created them. We have to rise above them to the next level. So, as long as we see ourselves in our separate national identities and not through the lens of our shared humanity and in the context of the global civilization that we are lost for solutions. We need experiences to meet and lean into our fear of the other, stories that help us turn the inner and outer walls we have built up against each other sideways into bridges. I came to the realization that none of us can expect our governments to bring about change. that in fact it is disempowering to rely on them for change. So it was my personal choice to be part of a change I wanted to see in the world, just as my grandmother had said. So after 2 years of volunteering and campaigning for unaccompanied children in the Calais jungle, my friend Joe McDonald and I decided to take action. We had a clear vision. We gathered a dedicated team of diverse professionals and collaboratively set up Anthem House, a safe home for young people who survived their long, dangerous journeys to the UK on their own. They arrive on foot, in lorries and small boats, often without one word of English, with only the clothes on their backs, scared and exhausted. Whilst living with us until they're 18, we support them as they're vulnerable to further exploitation, radicalization, and complex trauma that affects all of them. Anthem House supports young people around the clock as they learn to rebuild trust in others and slowly regain a sense of belonging. They develop life skills, go to college, explore their talents, how to use their voices, all whilst enduring complicated asylum processes. Our life-changing work has been widely acknowledged. Since opening, we have supported over 50 teenagers to move towards independence. Anthem consists of 20 different nationalities. Between us, we speak 22 languages and dialects, navigate hundreds of details and decisions daily, have various ways of praying, and numerous ways of cooking rice. We learned very quickly that none of this is easy, nor a one-way street, and that it is in fact our young people teaching us how to grow individually and collectively resilient, teaching us about the power of hope, the power of perseverance and faith, and what overcoming obstacles, vicarious trauma, and bridging difference really looks like. It is an honor to know them. Because aside from being normal teenagers, these young people are some of the real-life heroes of our times. And it is their stories that should be on the big screens. One young person walked from Eritrea to Libya, where he survived prison and is now performing Shakespeare on stage and petitioning UK Parliament as a young leader. One escaped Iran, recently started university in the hope to become a heart surgeon, to one day repair the broken hearts in her home country, and now studies biogenetics. After healing his injuries, another won the Young Sportsman of the Year award in our local football club. Under our roof, former political opponents become friends and pioneers for peace. All of them are extraordinary, not because they get Duke of Edinburgh awards, become political activists, entrepreneurs, chefs, barbers, and run in the local marathon, but because despite their immense losses and injuries, they rise every morning, show up, follow their dreams, and bring their unique gifts to their new communities. They give us hope for the future. All of these young people need a seat at the table of decision-making. We need their stories, voices, and lived experience to inform policy change. It is them who now welcome and mentor some of our new young people and inspire some of the complex solutions in our own organization and beyond. This past Christmas, we celebrated with an Afghan, Sudanese, Kurdish, Iranian, and German party, cooked up a feast, and taught each other dances from our home countries. Afterwards, we took some of our Muslim boys to an Anglican church for midnight mass where they felt moved to take communion. This is how walls get turned sideways into bridges and create ripples of healing in the wider community. One in every 78 people on Earth has been forced to flee their home. Over 100 million people is currently on the move in pursuit for safety in our world. Half of them are children. Climate change is set to exceed this number, and who knows, it could be us having to put our children or ourselves in a boat. What we do at Anthem is merely a drop in a vast ocean of endless need. Yet we know that one life can touch 100 lives, and in turn can touch 1,000 lives, and so on. We run a model that can be adopted by communities and organizations around the world. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, to turn a blind eye, close our hearts, and say, this has nothing to do with me. But now more than ever, our individual choices shape our collective future. We all have the choice to move towards and lean into conflicts and crises of othering, in ourselves and with each other. And we all have the power to make every act of compassion a form of activism, to build bridges of integration and belonging. And every time we do this, we create a ripple of love in our world. And we walk one step further on the long road towards one people on one planet. My grandmother's words of warning have been echoed by many other voices in recent times. Now is not a time to stand by and watch history repeat itself. So where are you going to position yourself? Thank you.